The massive red ships appeared in Earth's sky without warning, blocking out the sun like metal mountains floating in space. Each vessel stretched for miles, their dark surfaces covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own evil light. On the largest ship, Admiral Kevthak stood tall on his command deck, his 6 yellow eyes looking down at the small blue world below. "Look at this pathetic place," his second officer said, his voice making a clicking sound through his sharp teeth. "These humans still use rockets that burn fuel. They are like children playing with sticks." Kevthak nodded slowly. For 3,000 years, his people had traveled from star to star, and every time it was the same story. They would arrive, show their power, demand surrender, and within 3 days, every world would give up. No one had ever said no to the Velkari Dominion. No one had ever been foolish enough to try. "Send the message," Kevthak ordered. The usual words. Far below on Earth, every television, computer, and phone screen suddenly went bright white. Then words appeared in every language on the planet. "You will surrender to the Velkari Dominion. You have 72 hours. Submit or be destroyed." In New York City, President Kim Tae-ho sat at a long table surrounded by the most powerful people on Earth. His hands shook slightly as he read the message again. He was a calm man who had led his country through many difficult times, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "This cannot be real," whispered the British Prime Minister. "Aliens demanding our surrender? It sounds like a bad movie." Defense Minister Park Ji-woo stood up so fast his chair fell over. "Real or not, I will not bow to anyone who threatens our world." His face was red with anger. "We are not cowards who will give up without a fight." "But what can we do?" asked the German Chancellor. "Look at those ships. Our most powerful weapons would bounce off them like stones thrown at a tank." Around the table, world leaders argued back and forth. Some wanted to surrender immediately to save lives. Others wanted to fight even if it meant death for everyone. The room grew louder and more desperate as the hours passed. In the corner of the room, Commander Lee So-jin stood perfectly still. She was the head of Earth's Defense Force, a job that had seemed important until today. Now she realized how small and weak her forces really were. She had studied every weapon Earth possessed, and she knew the truth that others were afraid to say out loud. They could not win. The alien ships were too big, too advanced, too powerful. If they fought, millions would die and they would still lose in the end. Any reasonable person would surrender to save lives. Any smart leader would choose to live under alien rule rather than choose death. But as Lee So-jin listened to the debate, she felt something growing inside her chest. It was not hope because she knew there was no hope. It was not anger, though she was angry. It was something else, something that her grandfather had told her about when she was young. "Some things are more important than living," he had said. "Some things are worth dying for." Her grandfather had fought in wars when Korea was not free. He had seen what happened when good people did nothing while bullies took control. He had taught her that sometimes you must stand up and fight, even when you know you cannot win because the fight itself matters. "We have a choice to make," President Kim Tae-ho said quietly, and the room fell silent. "We can surrender and hope. These aliens will be kind masters. Or we can fight and probably die." "If we fight, our children will die," said the Japanese representative. "If we surrender, our children will never be free," replied Park Ji-woo. Lee So-jin stepped forward. Everyone turned to look at her. She was not a politician or a president, just a soldier who had sworn to protect her world. "I have studied their ships," she said. "I have looked at our weapons. I know we cannot win a war against them." The room grew even quieter. "But I also know something else. In all of human history, we have always faced enemies stronger than us. Sometimes we won, sometimes we lost, but we always chose to fight for what mattered." She walked to the window and looked up at the alien ships that covered the sky. "These aliens expect us to surrender because everyone else has surrendered. They think we are just another weak species that will kneel when threatened. Maybe they are right." She turned back to face the room. "But maybe it is time someone showed the galaxy what happens when you threaten the wrong species." President Kim Tae-ho looked around the table at the faces of Earth's leaders. Fear and determination mixed together in their eyes. Outside, the alien ships waited for an answer that would change everything. The 72 hours were almost up. Admiral Kevthak stood on his command bridge, watching the timer count down to 0. 72 hours had passed since they delivered their ultimatum to the small blue planet. Around him, his officers prepared to receive the surrender message that always came. It was the same routine they had followed on thousands of worlds, across the galaxy. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," his communications officer announced. The young Velkari's voice carried the bored tone of someone who had done this many times before. "Put it on the main screen," Kevthak ordered. He expected to see frightened leaders begging for mercy, promising to serve the Dominion faithfully. That was how it always went. Instead, the screen showed a human male sitting calmly at a desk. Other humans stood behind him, their faces serious, but not afraid. The man's hair was gray and his eyes were steady as he looked directly into the camera. "I am President Kim Tae-ho of Earth," the human said in a clear voice. "We have received your message. We have discussed your demands. We have considered all possibilities." He paused for a moment, then spoke words that had never been heard on a Velkari warship. "Our answer is no." The bridge became completely silent. Officers turned to stare at each other in shock. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever refused to surrender. Not once. Not ever. "He must not understand," whispered Kevthak's second in command. "These primitives do not know what we can do to them." "Show them," Kevthak ordered, his voice hard. "Destroy one of their cities, then they will understand." But before the Velkari could fire their weapons, something impossible happened. Small ships began rising from Earth's surface. They were tiny compared to the massive alien vessels, like insects flying toward giants. The human ships were crude and slow, held together with metal plates and powered by simple engines. On the bridge of the lead human ship, Commander Lee So-jin checked her weapons one last time. The ship was called Soul's Pride, and it was the most advanced vessel in Earth's fleet. Compared to the alien ships, it was nothing more than a flying metal box with guns attached. "Commander, all ships are in position," her communications officer reported. Around them, 200 human vessels formed defensive lines between Earth and the alien fleet. Lee So-jin opened a channel to broadcast to every human ship. "This is Commander Lee So-jin to all Earth Defense Force vessels. I will not lie to you. We cannot win this fight. Our weapons are too weak, our ships too small, our technology too primitive." She paused, looking out at the massive red ships that filled the sky above them. "But today is not about winning. Today is about showing these aliens and the entire galaxy that there are still people who will not kneel. Today we teach the universe that some things are more important than living. Today we show them how to say no." The human ships moved forward, their small engines glowing blue against the darkness of space. They looked like children's toys next to the Velkari warships, but they flew with purpose and determination. Admiral Kevthak watched in amazement as the primitive fleet approached his forces. "They are actually going to fight us," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "They know they will die and they are still coming." "Orders, sir?" asked his weapons officer. Kevthak hesitated for the first time in his military career. Something about this situation felt wrong, different from every other conquest. But the Dominion had its rules, and he was a loyal officer. "Fire," he ordered. Thakir, Velkari weapons lit up space with deadly energy. The first wave of human ships disappeared in bright flashes of light, destroyed so quickly they had no time to even scream. But more ships kept coming. The second wave fired their primitive missiles and guns, weapons that barely scratched the alien armor. Then they too died in explosions of fire and metal. But still more came. Captain Park Min-ho piloted his fighter toward the largest alien ship, knowing he would not live to return home. Behind him, his wingman Lee Hai-jin followed closely. Her small craft loaded with every explosive they could carry. "This is for Earth," Park said into his radio as alien weapons tore his ship apart. "This is for freedom," Lee Hai-jin added as her ship exploded against the alien hull, leaving only a tiny black mark on the massive vessel. Wave after wave of human ships attacked and died. Their weapons did almost no damage to the alien fleet, but they never stopped coming. Pilots who knew they would die in the next few seconds still flew forward, still fired their guns, still fought with everything they had. On the alien command bridge, Admiral Kevthak stared at the display showing the battle. His weapons were destroying human ships faster than his computers could count, but new ones kept appearing from Earth's surface. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "we have destroyed over 300 of their vessels, but they are still launching more." For the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, Admiral Kevthak felt something he had never experienced before. It was not fear, exactly, but something close to it. Something that made him question what he thought he knew about war and victory. These humans were teaching the galaxy something dangerous. They were showing that surrender was not the only choice. Captain Park Min-seok pressed his back against the broken wall of what used to be a shopping center in New Seoul. The city lay in ruins around him, its tall buildings now piles of twisted metal and concrete. Smoke rose from fires that had been burning for weeks, and the smell of destruction filled the air. The Velkari had landed their armies after destroying most of Earth's space fleet. They expected the planet to surrender quickly once their soldiers marched through the streets. Instead, they found humans hiding in every building, fighting from every corner, refusing to give up even when death was certain. "Captain, I can see them," whispered Lieutenant Choi Hyejin from her position on the second floor of a ruined building. Through her rifle scope, she watched a group of alien soldiers walking down the street below. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms, carrying weapons that could melt through steel. The patrol leader is the one with the red markings on his armor. Park looked at his small team of fighters. There were only 5 of them left from the original unit of 30. The others had died in previous missions, but they had never stopped trying to hurt the enemy. Each small attack might not change the war, but it reminded the aliens that humans would never stop fighting. "How many shots do you have?" Park asked Hyejin. 3, maybe 4 before they find my position," she replied. "After that, they will fill this building with laser fire." Park nodded. It was the same calculation they made every day. How much damage could they do before they died? How many enemy soldiers could they kill before the aliens killed them? It was not about winning anymore. It was about making the cost of victory so high that the aliens would regret ever coming to Earth. "Take the shot," he ordered. "We will cover your escape as long as we can." "There is no escape, Captain," Hyejin said calmly. "We all know that." "Then we die fighting," Park replied. "Just like the others. Far across the galaxy, on a mining world called Kepler 442b, 2 alien workers stopped their digging to share whispered news. The Zephyrians were a peaceful species that had surrendered to the Velkari Dominion 50 years ago. Since then, they had worked in the mines, digging metals for the alien empire. "Did you hear the latest report?" Keth asked his friend Vel. He looked around carefully to make sure no Velkari guards were listening. "The humans are still fighting. It has been 6 months now." Vel stopped working and stared at his friend. "That is impossible. No one fights the Dominion for 6 months. No one fights them for 6 days and lives." "But they are," Keth insisted. "The reports keep coming through the underground networks. Every day the humans attack Velkari forces. Every day they die by the hundreds, but every day they keep fighting." "Why would they do such a thing?" Vel asked. "Do they not understand that resistance is hopeless?" "Maybe that is not the point," Keth said quietly. "Maybe they fight because fighting itself has meaning." The conversation was happening on thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Velkari rule for decades were hearing something they had thought was impossible. Somewhere in the universe, people were saying no to the Dominion. Somewhere, beings were choosing death over surrender. In the slave quarters of Vega Prime, workers carved a single word into the walls of their cells. No. In the tribute halls of the Centauri system, servants whispered the phrase that was spreading like fire through space. The humans said no. On the Velkari homeworld, Admiral Kevthak stood in the great council chamber before the highest leaders of the Dominion. The room was filled with ancient creatures who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had never known defeat, never experienced true resistance. "Explain yourself, Admiral," said High Dominator Velthros, his voice cold with anger. "6 months ago you assured us that this primitive world would fall within days. Yet our forces remain trapped in endless combat." Kevthak felt sweat on his forehead, something that had never happened to him before in all his years of military service. "High Dominator, the humans do not fight as other species fight. They do not seek to win battles in the traditional sense." "Then, what do they seek?" demanded another council member. "They seek to make us pay for every meter of ground, every building, every street," Kevthak explained. "They know they cannot defeat our armies, but they can make victory cost us more than we expected to pay." "Casualties?" Velthros asked. "Significant," Kevthak admitted. "We have lost more soldiers on this one world than we lost in the conquest of the entire Zephyrian system." The council chamber fell silent. These numbers were impossible according to everything they knew about war and conquest. "There is something else," Kevthak said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The humans are inspiring others. We are receiving reports of unrest on 17 different worlds. Worlds that accepted our rule decades ago are beginning to question our authority." High Dominator Velthros rose from his throne, his ancient face twisted with rage. "You are telling me that one primitive planet is threatening the stability of our entire empire?" "Not threatening it, High Dominator," Kevthak replied. "Teaching it. Teaching it that resistance is possible. Teaching it how to say no." The word hung in the air like poison. For 3,000 years the Velkari had built their empire on a simple truth: all species would eventually surrender. Now for the first time that truth was being questioned. Engineer Ko Seung-ho crawled through the narrow tunnel that led to his hidden observation post beneath the ruins of Busan. For 8 months, he had been living underground, watching the war rage above his head. His job was to record everything that happened and send reports to the human resistance leaders who were still alive. Today, something was different. Through his small periscope, he could see Velkari ships burning in the sky. But the explosions were not coming from human weapons. These were different ships attacking the aliens, ships with strange markings he had never seen before. "What is happening up there?" he whispered to himself, adjusting his radio equipment to pick up enemy communications. Suddenly, his radio crackled to life with a voice speaking in accented English. "Earth, this is Captain Keith of the Free Zephyrian Fleet. We have heard your call across the stars. We received your message loud and clear. No one fights alone." Ko Seung-ho nearly dropped his equipment in shock. Alien ships were helping Earth? Species from other worlds had come to fight alongside humanity? He quickly activated his emergency transmitter to contact the human leadership. Deep underground in a bunker that had once been a subway station, President Kim Tae-ho sat at a makeshift desk surrounded by maps and communication equipment. His clothes were dirty, his face was thin from months of poor food, but his eyes still held the determination that had led Earth to say no to the Dominion. When Ko Seung-ho's message reached him, Kim Tae-ho stood up slowly. His advisors gathered around him as he activated the main communication system. "This is President Kim Tae-ho of Earth," he said into the microphone. "Captain Keith, we welcome you to our fight. We are honored that you would risk your lives for a world you have never seen." "We have seen what you have done," came Keth's reply. "You showed the galaxy that surrender is not the only choice. Now we all fight for the same thing, the right to be free." Above ground, the battle was changing. Zephyrian ships, built for mining but now armed with weapons, attacked Velkari forces alongside human fighters. Other species joined the fight as well. Ships from the Kepler system, vessels from the outer rim worlds, even small craft from species that had been slaves for generations. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 57 different worlds, beings who had lived under Velkari rule for decades began to rebel. They destroyed Dominion buildings, attacked alien soldiers, and declared their independence. The careful order that had held the galaxy together for 3,000 years was falling apart. High Dominator Velthros stood in his council chamber, staring at a holographic map that showed the Dominion's territory. Red lights marked worlds. In rebellion, there were so many red lights that the map looked like it was covered in blood. "How many now?" he asked his military advisor. 57 worlds in open rebellion, my lord," the advisor replied, his voice shaking with fear. "And the number grows every day. We are fighting wars on dozens of fronts simultaneously." "Our military?" Velthros demanded. "Stretched beyond all limits, we have never had to fight a real war before. Our forces were designed to occupy peaceful worlds, not to battle determined enemies across the galaxy." Velthros turned away from the map, his ancient mind struggling to understand what was happening. How has one primitive world caused this? Chaos? How have these humans destroyed everything we built? "They did not destroy it, my lord," the advisor said quietly. "They revealed that it was already broken. They taught the galaxy that our rule was based on fear, not strength. They showed everyone that we could be defied. And now? Now every species in the galaxy knows that the Velkari Dominion can be beaten. They know that if they fight together, they can win." On Earth, in a hidden command center built in the remains of Sol, Dr. Yoon Mi-young stood before a council of beings from dozens of different worlds. She had been a university professor before the war, studying alien biology. Now she was the chief negotiator for the Galactic Resistance Movement. Around her, creatures of all shapes and sizes worked together, Zephyrians with their blue skin, Keplers with their multiple eyes, Rimworlders with their long arms, and dozens of other species. They all had one thing in common. They had learned to say no. "The Dominion has sent a message," Dr. Yoon announced, "to the Council. They want to discuss a ceasefire. They want to negotiate." The chamber fell silent as the representatives considered this news. After 3,000 years of absolute rule, the Velkari Dominion was asking to talk instead of giving. Orders Commander Lee Sojin, now bearing scars from a dozen battles, stood up from her chair. Half her face was covered by a metal plate where a Velkari weapon had nearly killed her, but her voice was still strong. "They want to negotiate?" she asked. "After 8 months of trying to destroy us, now they want to talk?" "What should we tell them?" asked Captain Keth. Lee Sojin looked around the room at all the beings who had risked everything to fight for freedom. "We tell them that we negotiate only one thing, their complete surrender. They can give up their empire and join the free galaxy, or they can continue fighting a war they cannot win." "And if they refuse?" asked a Kepler representative. "Then we teach them what humans learned long ago," Lee Sojin replied. "That some things are worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes." The galaxy had changed forever. The age of the Dominion was ending, and the age of freedom was beginning. The great hall on the neutral space station was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Representatives from 300 worlds sat in chairs arranged in a giant circle, their different languages creating a soft buzz of conversation. At the center of the room, 2 tables faced each other like opponents in an ancient duel. Admiral Kevthak sat at one table, his 6 eyes looking tired and defeated. Once, he had commanded the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Now, his great fleet was reduced to a few dozen ships, and those that remained were filled with soldiers who no longer believed in their cause. Across from him sat the leaders of the Galactic Freedom Alliance, Admiral Song Jae-wook, who had once been just a captain in Earth's small navy, now commanded the combined fleets of dozens of worlds. His uniform was simple compared to the elaborate robes that Kevthak wore, but everyone in the room knew who held the real power. "Let us begin," said President Kim Tae-ho, who served as the spokesperson for the human delegation. His hair had turned completely gray during the 2 years of war, and deep lines marked his face. The weight of leading his species through its darkest time showed in every movement he made. Admiral Song Jae-wook stood and began reading from a document that would change the galaxy forever. The terms of surrender are as follows. The Velkari Dominion will immediately dissolve its imperial government. All worlds currently under Dominion control will be granted full independence. War crimes tribunals will be established to judge those responsible for atrocities committed during the occupation period. He paused and looked directly at Kevthak. The Velkari people themselves will be given the world of Velkar Prime as their home, where they will live under the protection and oversight of the Galactic Freedom Alliance. Kevthak's mandibles clicked together in anger. You would make us prisoners on our own world? You would turn the rulers of the galaxy into slaves? No, President Kim Tae-ho said, leaning forward. We are offering you something that your empire never understood. We are giving you a choice. What choice is this? Kevthak demanded. The choice to say no, Kim Tae-ho replied. You can reject these terms if you wish. You can continue fighting a war that you cannot win. You can watch as more of your people die for a cause that is already lost. Or you can choose to join a galaxy, where every species, including yours, has the right to live free. The hall fell completely silent. Everyone understood that this moment would be remembered forever. The species that had ruled through fear and force was being offered the same freedom that they had denied to others for 3,000 years. Dr. Yoon Mi-young, who had become the chief diplomat for the Alliance, spoke next. Admiral, your people are not evil. They are not monsters. They are beings who were taught that might makes right, that the strong should rule the weak. But strength without justice is just bullying. Power without mercy is just cruelty. Kevthak looked around the room at all the species that had once knelt before Velkari ships. Now they sat as equals, working together to build something new. You have destroyed everything we built, he said quietly. No, Admiral, Dr. Yoon replied, her voice gentle but firm. We simply reminded the galaxy that what you built was already broken. Fear is not a foundation for civilization. Terror is not a basis for order. You ruled through pain, and pain always ends eventually. Then what happens now? Kevthak asked. Now we all learn to live together, said Captain Keth of the Zephyrian delegation. We learn to solve problems with words instead of weapons. We learn to build instead of destroy. The signing ceremony took several hours as representatives from each world added their names to the historic document. When it was finally Kevthak's turn, he stood slowly and walked to the table. His hand shook slightly as he picked up the ceremonial pen. History will remember this day, he said. Yes, agreed President Kim Tae-ho. It will remember the day that freedom became possible for everyone. Later, as the ceremony ended and representatives began to leave for their home worlds, Commander Lee So-jin stood at the observation deck of the space station. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships departing in all directions, carrying the news of peace to every corner of the galaxy. Her reflection in the glass showed the scars she carried from the war. Half her face was marked by burn scars from a Velkari weapon, and her left arm had been replaced with a mechanical one after she lost it in battle. But her eyes still held the determination that had led humanity to make it stand. Behind her, Dr. Yoon approached. What are you thinking about? She asked. The cost, Lee So-jin replied. Half of Earth's population is gone, entire cities turned to ash. Millions of people died because we chose to fight instead of surrender. Do you regret it? Lee So-jin was quiet for a long moment. No. But I think about all the children who will never know their parents. All the families that were destroyed. I wonder if there could have been another way. There could have been, Dr. Yoon said. We could have surrendered. We could have lived as slaves. But then our children would have grown up in a galaxy where freedom was impossible, where saying no was unthinkable. And now children across the galaxy will grow up knowing that they have choices. They will know that when someone tries to make them kneel, they can stand. They will know that the most powerful word in any language is a simple, stubborn no. Through the observation deck, they watched the last ships disappear into hyperspace, carrying beings home to worlds that were free for the first time in millennia. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Building a galaxy based on freedom instead of fear would take generations, but it would be worth it, because finally everyone had learned how to stand.